today's lesson is titled Movie Genres. And as you know, um, I've told you many, many, many times that we can look at cinematography as a hybrid between photography and literature because cinematography borrows from both. And the analogy that I have always made is that photography is cinematography's daddy and literature is cinematography's mom. Today we want to talk about an aspect that is very similar to literature because you know that film and cinematography are used for storytelling purposes. We tell stories, and most of you consume stories through film. So when we talk about genre in film, it refers to the method based on similarities of narrative elements from which films are constructed. And these models are borrowed from literature because we have genres in literature. So when we say that they have similarities in narrative elements, what we're doing is we're categorizing films. There are several ways of categorizing, but the one that we're specifically addressing today is categorization through genre. And when we say genre, we're referring to similarities in narrative elements. An example, if you watch a horror movie, is the type of story told there the same type of story that you would see in a romantic comedy? Or the story's different, the narrative different? They're different, right? They are different. They have their own distinctive elements. And that's what we want to explore in the next few lessons. Genre is going to play a large role in the marketing of a film. And when we're talking about the marketing of the film, it's the way that a film is advertised. Because you know that films are advertised because films are also a product that we consume. The same way that you consume sneakers, the same way that you consume t-shirts, the same way that you consume cell phones, is something that we purchase, we give money for. And there are advertisement, products are advertised. Genre is used in the marketing of a film. Filmmakers, the studios, use it to minimize the economic risk of making a film. Why? Because some genres are more popular than others. For example, a type of genre that was very popular a long time ago was westerns, movies of cowboys and Indians. Just ask your grandpa or your great grandpa, and they'll tell you, yeah, that's what I used to see, cowboys and Indian movies. How many cowboys and Indian movies are done today? How many westerns are done today? No. You think there's a reason for that? Uh, pe- People don't like them very much nowadays. There was a time when people liked those movies. So Hollywood made a bunch of those movies. Nowadays, people are not interested in that particular genre very much. So almost no westerns are made anymore. Very few westerns are made nowadays. So if a studio knows that people don't like westerns, you think they're going to make a western? It wouldn't make sense, right? Because they will lose money. They will lose money. So that's how filmmakers use genre to minimize the economic risk. Because every time that they make a movie, it's a risk because they put in money hoping that people will see the movie. But what if people don't want to see it? You see what the problem is? You see how this works? If the studio is investing money in a film with the expectation that people will go and see it, and they're going to get that money and a lot more back. So studios are not going to spend money on film that people are not going to see if they can help it. This is also used by film distributors to use effectively in the marketing of the movie to the public. And audiences, which are you and me, because we consume movies, we're the audience, we use it to develop an expectation of how pleasurable the viewing experience will be. If you, for example, love fantasy movies and you see this ad, this trailer, oh, a fantasy movie, cool, I want to see that one because you enjoy fantasy, right? So it minimizes economic risk for studios. It helps distributors market the film effectively, and it helps develop an expectation of how entertaining or pleasurable it will be to the audience. Genre contains several elements that include the setting. The setting is the environment in which the story takes place. It's the when and the where of a film. Something else that you see in genre is a theme or topic, which refers to what are the issues that the film is addressing. Is the film about a pandemic? Is the film about alien invasion? Is the film about an evil corporation that's taking over a small town? So, depending on the theme or the topic, that will also create a certain expectation on you. And another element of genre is the mood, which is the emotional tone of the film. Remember that films communicate not only information, but also emotions through a mood, through an atmosphere. We also have the format of the film, which is how the film is presented to you. If it's going to be an IMAX film, if it's going to be a Panavision film, or something like that. And genres usually branch out into subgenres. Think in the genre like an umbrella term with little umbrellas under it. Okay? And genres can also be combined. Some are combined into hybrid genres. For example, there's such a thing as I mentioned earlier as a romantic comedy. And what are you mixing there? Romance and comedy. You put them together, you have the romantic comedy. The same way that you have a horror comedy. Have you ever seen a horror comedy? That it's a horror movie. It's supposed to make you afraid, but it's also supposed to make you laugh. Anyone? Yeah, I love them too. Like my favorite one is called Shaun of the Dead. It's a British movie. It's super funny. It's about a zombie apocalypse, but it's super funny. So but it has a scary element too because it's horror. You got the zombies, and then you have the stupidity of the hero, the protagonist, right? And it's super funny. So they can be combined. What I want to remind you is that this is a way of categorizing films, but it's not the only way of categorizing films. But being an English teacher myself, being a literature teacher, the method that I prefer to use to categorize film is through genre because of their distinctive narrative elements. I think it communicates better to people what to expect. But there are other forms of categorizing film. For example, you can categorize film like terms like animation, children's film, and so on. These are non-genre based film categories. Um, you have family films, you have cult films, you have documentary films, you have adult films, you have silent films. All of these are forms of categorization. They can provide certain information, but I don't think that they can convey better and more well-rounded type of information that genre can do. The genre can provide. So let's look at some of the genres and subgenres that we see in cinema today, and they include action. And action is usually the type of film where you have a lot of physical violence. Everybody loves action. Very few people enjoy films that are like more quiet. People like to see people jumping over buildings, bombs exploding, people being chased, guys fighting kung fu, all that kind of stuff. Guns, explosions, you name it. And action has always been very popular. And action can branch out into different subgenres. It has subcategories. An example of an action subcategory is the Die Hard scenario. And the Die Hard scenario is usually the type of movie that takes place in a limited location. They're not traveling all around the world. They are in one place. Like in this case, in the film Die Hard, the whole movie takes place in one building and one building only. All the action of the film occurs inside this building. This building is taken over by terrorists, by bad guys, a bunch of them, and there's only a bunch of people are held hostage, and there's only one hero that is fighting against all these guys, and of course it's one against many. So in that case, he's not superhuman, he's not Superman, so he has to use what? He has to use his cunning, his intelligence, and he has to use trickery to overcome them to succeed. Another subgenre includes military or war movies. And of course, these feature wars. You also have spy fiction, where you usually have a secret agent or some type of military intelligence personnel or some type of espionage mission. And they are equipped with special gadgets, like the James Bond movies. You know James Bond? Anyone? Okay, exactly. Well, that is spy fiction, sir. That is spy fiction. Other subgenres include martial art films, where they feature martial combat, kung fu, chop suey, karate, all that stuff that we love. Um, and we have westerns because, I mean, westerns without gunfights, I've never seen one. Honestly, to this day, I've never seen a western without a gunfight. They're always shooting and whatnot. So you have action there also. You have violence. So those will be some subcategories of action. Another genre is adventure. And you're going to see that adventure is combined a lot with action. But adventure is something else. Adventure is a story about a hero that journeys to an epic or distant place to accomplish something, like they're chasing something, they're after a treasure or after some type of mystical device. And there's an element of travel, of traveling a lot. That's why, how many of you go out on vacations and travel a lot? Okay. And I know not no you're locked down now. I know that you're not traveling, you're locked down. But when you go back to normal, the way it used to be a few months ago, most likely you'll get on an airplane and go somewhere. And when you have traveled, doesn't it feel like an adventure? Doesn't it? Yeah, because it is, because it is. There's also an element of danger in these movies, right? Like someone's like they're in a jungle, they're gonna fall off a cliff, or they're being chased by I don't know, savages and cannibals, or they're gonna fall off a waterfall. All these kind of things, right? That are challenging, but that are distinct from action. So you combine them and you have action adventure. Another famous popular genre is comedy that has the mission of making you laugh. That's the mission of a comedy. If the comedy does not make you laugh, it failed, right? Why comedy if it's not making you laugh? It's the centerpiece is always humor, and comedy has its series of subgenres. Also, a type of comedy is a comedy of manners, like you're seeing here from a movie called Breakfast at Tiffany's, or maybe a movie that you have seen called Mean Girls. And these kind of films, they satirize the manners and affection of high society. In other words, they make fun of rich people or people that are part of an elite, a clique. Another type of comedy is a slapstick. This type is very immature. It's very unsophisticated. It's very childish because it involves exaggerated physical violence that exceed the boundaries of common sense. And this is the type of comedy that is directed at children. Like when you see someone like running around, like when Tom is chasing Jerry and Tom steps on a rake and hits himself in the face, and you start laughing. You go, ha ha ha! He hit himself in the face. Well, that's what slapstick is. A perfect. Chavo el Ocho is a good example. Well said, Mr. Perez. The Three Stooges. Have you seen the Three Stooges? What do? They're always slapping the snot out of each other, right, and pulling their hair and all that, and that's supposed to be funny. So that is called slapstick. Another type of comedy is a parody that mocks people or works, or they use sarcasm to mock symbols and events. I think that a good example of a parody is Scary Movie as a parody. It's a parody of horror movies of the 90s. There's a show on TV called Saturday Night Live, and it's also a parody. It makes fun of people and things. They're always making fun of Donald Trump. The romantic comedy is another subgenre that combines comedy and romance. And black comedy is the type of comedy that is based on uh, normally tragic and taboo subjects. It's like they make fun of things that are not very funny. You need to have a particular sense of humor to enjoy this, right? Not everybody. That's why it's not very popular because most people don't have this type of humor. They deal with subjects like that include death or murder or suicide or drugs or war, and they make fun out of that, and it's supposed to be funny. And some people get it, and some people don't. Another another genre is crime, which are stories about crime that are being committed, and subcategories include the detective story, the whodunit, solve a crime. I mean, because the murder mystery is the one that tries to solve a murder, like the Sherlock Holmes movies. You also have hard boiled, which are very, very, very violent, and they're for adults. They're not for family consumption. They're very adult because of the content. And you have gangster films like The Godfather. That happens to be one of the greatest films ever made, The Godfather. And Carlitos Way, another example, and Scarface is another example. We also have dramas, and dramas are films that present serious and realistic situations. They're not movies that present fantasy, but present reality that is very grounded. And this is probably the largest genre of all, the most done, because I think that every movie contains an element of drama. If you, for example, are watching a movie about the mommy that just lost her job and she has cancer, and because she lost her job, now she lost her medical insurance, and her son tries to help, but he's thinking if he should be selling drugs or not. Those type of things are things that happen in the real world. That's not fantasy, right? They deal with current issues and problems like drug addiction, unemployment. If you see a movie about the pandemic, that will be categorized as a drama. Problems that are family problems, problem between children and their parents. Subgenres include the melodrama. Melodrama is like the telenovelas are the best example of melodrama because melodrama means drama with music. Melos, melody, music. Like they put music in the background and you're like crying and oh, the music makes you cry. Um, like in telenovelas, music is a big deal in telenovelas. Like Pat Magul. A biopic is a movie that are biographies of people that really existed. For example, one of the best biopic that I've seen recently is a movie called Lincoln about the last days of the life of Abraham Lincoln. You have epics, and epics are dramas that are historical and deal with very large events. The best example I can give you is a movie called Gone with the Wind, which is probably the greatest movie of all time. And you have also romantic movies that fall in this category. You have the courtroom drama, and the legal thriller also falls into this category because courtrooms are very dramatic places. Sometimes you're dealing with life and death situations. You also have fantasy, and fantasy is one of three genres that deal with extraordinary events. When I mean extraordinary events, are events that are uncommon, that things that just don't happen. For example, if you wake up one morning because you heard some sound in your backyard and you opened the window and you saw your neighbor's your neighbor's dog in your backyard making noise, well, that could be common. But what if you opened the window and you saw that what was making the noise was a giant dragon? Would that be common? Would that be ordinary? Definitely not. So that would be extraordinary. So there are three genres that deal with the extraordinary, and one of those is fantasy. And how does fantasy justify it? Easy, by saying that it's magic. That's all they have to say. Hey, that guy is flying on a carpet. How can that be? It's a magic carpet. Or hey, that guy used this wand and he turned that dog into a cactus. How is that possible? It's a magic wand. So that's how fantasy justifies these extraordinary events. And examples of or subgenres of fantasy include high fantasy, which is the type of fantasy that occurs in other worlds, other realms, like, for example, the Lord of the Ring movies and the Hobbits. These films take place in a place called Middle Earth. Where's Middle Earth? Not here. It's somewhere else. On the other hand, you have films like the Harry Potter movies. The Harry Potter movies are low fantasy. Why? Because they take place in England. And where's England? In some other planet. Where is it? It's here in planet Earth, right? It's in Europe. So Harry Potter, theoretically speaking, is here. So you see the difference between low fantasy and high fantasy. High fantasy is somewhere else. Low fantasy is where? Here on Earth. You also have superhero fiction, which is very popular today, right? You know these guys, don't you? Of course you do. Of course you do. And yeah, it's fantasy. Like Wonder Woman, where did she get her powers from? They're magical. And she had this lasso that makes people tell the truth. How come? It's magical. And she has a sword that can kill gods. Well, how? It's magical. So you see how fantasy works, guys. We also have science fantasy, which is a combination of science fiction and fantasy, like Star Wars. People mistakenly call Star Wars science fiction. Star Wars is not science fiction. Star Wars is science fantasy. It has many magical elements. Which one is the most common one? The Force. What's the Force? A magical thing. It's not scientific. You also have sword and sorcery, which is a combination of horror and fantasy, like the Conan the Barbarian movies. And you have wuxia, which is like, how many of you watch Naruto or Avatar? Not the film Avatar, the animated cartoon Avatar. Okay, well, they you see that they fight kung fu, they fly through the air, they do all kinds of things. They have martial arts, but it's fantasy based because you have a guy kicking, but he's flying like 10 stories high. Well, that's what wuxia is. Okay, and good examples include Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, my favorite martial arts movie, and another one called The 47 Ronin. And guys, that will be it for today. Here's the reshoot. Remember that this reshoot is supposed to be uploaded through the LMS where this to this lesson, exactly to this one. Okay, guys. Friday announcement. Friday, we're not going to meet. I am going to record the lesson and leave it in my website. I already sent you the URL so you can watch the class there. Okay, and do the LMS on Friday. So, guys, those of you that have questions can stay. Those of you that have no questions, you can leave now. And I'll be seeing you next week. You have a great day. Okay.